going to get this car running, and I'm not going to do any video magic here. Unfortunately, I had just a real bad problem with trying to get the camera to record, get this thing started. So in a nutshell, yes, it already runs and I've already ran it. But we'll just kind of go over everything and then we'll start it up again. The car still has a few minor problems. Minor being that carburetor is just garbage, but it will run it. So with all of our issues we had yesterday, we had a problem just getting a battery to crank it over. Good battery, it just took a lot of messing with it, charging it and doing stuff to it, but finally the battery's working, everything's working as it should. I'll try to make this video as sweet and short as I can so I don't do too much talking, but we'll go over everything that I've done and everything that there is, and maybe just help somebody else in their build if they're going to do a big block into their javelin or something. Alright, we'll start on the passenger side here. As far as the big block Chevy goes, it's all pretty much the way you would expect it. The motor mounts I sell, you can't really use the HEI because technically the motor sits back about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and I did that just to give the most room you can get for the radiator, and that way you don't have to modify your cross member. This is using just a stock big block oil pan, fits perfect, plenty of clearance from the cross member with the mounts I sell. These mounts here are a little bit different. I built them to make the HEI work because that's what I had on hand, and I trimmed up my cross member to accept it. But anyways, with the mounts I send, you can just use a point style distributor, and with that being said, you can actually fit your windshield wiper. You cannot do that with an HEI, unfortunately. I know it looks like you can't, trust me. Turbo 400 in here. The dipstick actually fits perfect. I have no issues with the dipstick. Not saying with the standard motor mounts that I send it should still work, because there's still plenty of room between the trans tunnel and transmission still. Had to build my own headers. We've gone over that a little bit. Get a lot of people asking me on the Facebook page. I had to build them. Okay, there might be a set somebody tells me that you can buy a set that takes very minor modifications, but all I can tell you is I had to build mine. I got my little power junction box here. It actually comes out of a just Chevy truck, Suburban, whatever, they all have them. It is kind of a nice little feature to have. I had this actually in the AMX, and it's just a little battery power junction. So you got your main wire going down to the starter, and then you got your other lead coming off of that goes to the junction box, so you can power stuff like, oh, you know, the car, stuff like that. Alternator is running its own wire, so it can go to the shut-off switch in the trunk. Fuel system was pretty simple. This was a 6-cylinder car to begin with. The fuel line is on the passenger side on most of all of these early 6-cylinder cars. I don't know about the later ones, but so that made life pretty easy as far as the fuel system to this. I just ran the stock metal fuel line, put a filter down there before the fuel pump. This is a real temporary fuel setup because we're going to get a different carburetor, and we're probably going to get the carburetor where the fuel inlet's on the passenger side. So that's just slung over there for now. AMC radiator, pretty simple fit. Really cheap Summit adjustable thermostat housing. You can swing that either way. Of course, it being a Summit cheap one, I've had a few problems of it leaking, but I think I got it fixed. Lower radiator hose is just a flex hose that goes down around. It looks like it's close to the harmonic balancer, but it's really not. And I can actually make a a little bracket for it if I feel like it. That's actually a piece of header that I made to fit into that flex hose, and goes into another piece of radiator hose. And I purposely made a dip down to give me some more room between the harmonic balancer and whatnot. Alternator, just GM alternator. Very inexpensive alternator kit on Summit. It worked out really good for this. Driver's side header, I had to build it. I had to notch it around the steering column, and then I had to swing it. You're probably not going to be able to see it real good, but it swings like an S and goes down to clear the cross member and everything. A little less complicated in the passenger side, but still had to build it. As far as this side goes, my cheap valve cover T-locks, which we went over in a video, they all fit but one. I had to use a nut on that one, which I had this valve cover off, checking valve lash and stuff like that. Everything else is pretty much the same. All the same wiring in it from the LS. All the LS did was wired in. The alternator used to be here, so it used to just jump right here from the alternator to power the car. Well, this one just wraps around, goes to our junction box. This wire here powers our electric fan relay, which we don't have the electric fan yet. Still waiting for it. The brake lock system. The wiring for the HE distributors, super simple. It's probably just as simple for a coil style or a point style. Anyways, just got the old wire from that was going to the MSD box under the dash is what powers on the distributor. This yellow wire is the tack wire, which I don't currently have a working tack right now. I'll come up and clean up some of this wiring. So I guess if we want to, we could count how many wires it takes to run this big block. I guess if you want to count the alternator wire, there's one wire, there's two wires, and the starter wire, three wires. Yeah, everything else is mechanical. Temperature gauge is mechanical, oil pump is mechanical, so technically just two wires, because you don't really need your alternator, because I actually don't have it properly hooked up anyway, so it's not even charging the battery when it's running. Carburetor, like I said, junky 600. I can't get it to work. Took it apart 3 or 4 times, went through it again. It doesn't work very well. It's not running the car very good at all. So cheap intake, seems to be working just fine. There's no intake leaks on it. I do appreciate it's got the option of putting your hold down for your distributor on that side as well. Yeah, that's pretty much everything under the hood. Motor mounts are, like I said, what they are, or what I sell. Like I said, these are very similar to what I sell. These are just, they bring the engine forward a little bit. I could maybe redo those to make them be adjustable that way too, but that'd be a little bit tough to do. So yeah, moving along, we'll go on this side of the underneath of the car. Got a couple little oil drips here, and that was my bad because I don't have the torque converter actually hooked up, and I didn't have it tied off, so whoops, it kind of made some racket down there. Hopefully nothing got hurt. Transmission, I got to get a drive line still. That's 53 inches is what you need for just your drive shaft. Your yoke, you need to get like a 6-inch to 8-inch yoke, and that'll fit perfect for a Turbo 400. I had to do some modifications to the cross member, transmission cross member mount. I kind of weakened it quite a bit. You can kind of see I had to cut out that whole top section, but that's sitting on a GM rubber mount. My exhaust is simple. It comes down, goes into the Flowmasters, and then just ends right there. I used to have them going under the axle, 3-inch exhaust, but it's really hard to get those to line up, and it really limits your clearance under the car. The driver's side is more or less the same. I haven't put the turn down on the into the exhaust on this side though. The interior, magically, most of it all still works. It's probably going to hear a lot of crunch noises. Nope, floor didn't buckle in. It usually does. Probably means I should quit eating or something. Yeah, so when we removed the LS motor and all that stuff, we were able to leave most every bit of wiring in here. So everything still works pretty much the same. Even the headlight buzzer still works. Headlights come on. These two switches will do the same. One of them was for the fan and one of them's for the halo lights. I don't remember which one. Starter is all the same still. For a cheap Chinese tachometer that was 12 bucks 4 years ago that I ran in the AMX forever and then ran into this car, it finally burned up. It doesn't work anymore. In fact, it started smoking even though I hadn't altered or touched any of the wiring, and it's so cheap I just grabbed the front of it and ripped it out so it didn't burst into flames. Master wiring just comes through the firewall. It'll travel, go under the seat eventually. I really cut up a little shifter job thing here along with the transmission. I got to get a floor shift for it still. And that's about it as far as the interior goes. We still need to get seats ordered for it. Footprint gas pedal. I think I went over that a little bit, but I got this really cheap throttle bracket assembly, and it was cheap, so I had to put that whole bracket assembly in there to strengthen her up. And yes, I know that's not for the throttle cable, but it just helps out a little bit. Throttle cable is pretty simple. And like I said, I know I don't get into too much detail showing videos on how I'm building this stuff, but everybody builds their car differently, so I'm just giving you the gist of it. If you really want to know the dimensions of that throttle cable and stuff like that, contact me on Facebook or however, and I'll be more than happy to give you a few measurements. But anyways, this is going to be disappearing, and we're just going to do the exhaust the way it is. And I'm thinking about doing some Road Warrior zoomies. I haven't decided. Of course, it's the wife's car now, so I guess she'll have the final say in that. But before we start it and run it on camera here, I think I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to put a few things on the car just to make it look a little better. And then we'll get it fired up. Alright, well, it looks a little bit better. Looks a little bit more complete, I would say. Before we start it, that big old hole I put in there for the LS engine still works out pretty good. A few of you were asking me, are the small block Chevys and big block Chevys going to be able to fit under the hood? Maybe. I'm using a high-rise intake, 1-inch spacer, there's a 2-inch spacer under the air cleaner, crappy carburetor. And you take all that in effect, it's possible, I don't know. But anyways, we'll just have to put ourselves a hood scoop on there, and that'll complete the look of the javelin. Now, I have not started this car at all today, so I'm really hoping it's not going to give me any crap and it's just going to start. Hope I don't have any battery deals or anything like that going on. So I am going to take the air cleaner off because we don't need it to start it. Set him on the floor. So we'll give it a few pumps, and let's see what happens. Oh, didn't make it. Try it again. And it looks like the fuel accelerator pump's leaking. Well, we'll close her down a little bit and see. It's always a big pain when you're by yourself. Well, there she is in all her glory. Like I said, this old carburetor just does not work very well, so I've taken it apart a whole bunch of times. I've taken needles, cleaned every port in this thing, adjusted the rear butterflies like everybody says you're supposed to on these big blocks. And nothing I do, can you turn the idle air mixture screws, it doesn't respond to it. It runs super rich. I mean, your eyes will start to burn after about a minute of running this thing. So, but there you go, she runs. She has 60 pounds of oil pressure when she is running. And surprisingly, with just the box fan, because I don't have an electric fan, I had a box fan on the front running on speed 3. I ran it for about 40 minutes yesterday, and revving it up, idling it at 1500 RPM, all that fun stuff, and it never got hotter than 190. So that's really cool. I'm glad to see that it's staying nice and cool and everything's working on it pretty good. So, well, I appreciate everybody watching these builds on my channel, and I appreciate the feedback I do get on Instagram and stuff. And one last thing, I guess, before we leave. Of course, the halo lights still work on it. So, alright, well, I'm going to cut the video here. And sorry about the lapse in videos. I haven't had any. The engine supposedly is going to be done next week for this. So then we can put the supercharger on it, hopefully, and start working on the AMX. I do got to order parts for this. Still, I got transmission I got to order, or transmission parts, driveline, all that stuff. So maybe next month or something I can get all that stuff ordered for this, and we'll see if my very quickly rebuilt transmission is going to work. Alright, well, we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.